I was about 17 years old on a road trip to Kansas with my parents. My dad, Abelardo, was always really good at staying awake when I was driving so that I wouldn't get tired and sleepy behind the wheel. We'd already been on the road for about 6 hours, and I told my dad that I was starting to get tired. I told him I needed him to talk to me. Abelardo then asked me if he had ever told me the story of how he and Mom had met. I told him no. He then proceeded to tell me that I needed to hear it. He begins by taking me back to 1956 when he's living at Stallman Farms in New Mexico. He said that Mr. Stallman would provide his workers with a place to live. Dad mentioned that there would be times he would have about 10 different roommates in a year. He proceeded by remembering a time a young man walked in with very little belongings. My dad helped him get settled in and familiar with the farm. Since they were roommates, Abelardo decided to get to know him. As in any new encounter, Abelardo asked his new roommate his name and to tell Abelardo about himself. Abelardo's new roommate began by saying his name was Jesus Rodriguez and that he had a girlfriend in Las Vegas, Mexico. Abelardo realized the coincidence that the town Jesus was from just happened to be the neighboring town from his hometown of San Pedro. At this point, my mother, Esther, interrupts his story, and she begins by telling me that Jesus didn't necessarily tell the whole truth. Jesus didn't tell Abelardo that before he left, she told Jesus that it wouldn't be wise of them to have a long-distance relationship, since she wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend, and he was going to be all the way in the United States anyway. Esther continued by saying that she really didn't like Jesus in that way. Abelardo then continued the story by telling me that they had gotten paid. It was the weekend, and Abelardo sees that Jesus was going out. Well, Jesus went out and didn't come back until Sunday. Abelardo says that on Monday, they were heading to work, and Jesus asked him to borrow money because he had spent it all over the weekend. Jesus then continued to tell Abelardo about Esther. He said she was beautiful and had an incomparable work ethic, and that she did not put up with anything from anyone. So then Abelardo proceeded to ask Jesus if he had a picture of Esther. Jesus produced a picture of Esther, and Abelardo saw it and said he thought to himself, that was the woman he was going to marry. Abelardo continued to tell me that when he saw the picture of Esther, he thought that she was so beautiful and that she deserved to be with someone who wasn't broke a few days later after payday and someone that wasn't out meeting new women. Abelardo then continued to tell me that some time had passed and he had received a letter from his father, Chon. The letter told him that there was a political rally for the gubernatorial candidate for Chihuahua, and that there was also going to be a wedding after the rally. Chon continued to tell Abelardo that they might need to play because Abelardo at the time was also a musician. But Chon wasn't sure if he needed Abelardo there. But he asked Abelardo to be there just in case they did need to play. So Abelardo asked for the time off and he goes to the political rally. Abelardo told me that it was June 3rd, 1956, when he arrived in San Pedro. He said that when he arrived, a lady asked him if he can be the representative for San Pedro and carry the sign in the parade representing San Pedro. He really didn't want to do it, but he agreed to do so. He said as he was walking in the parade, he told me that he kept an eye out, trying to see if he could spot Esther. He said he got to the stage where the candidate was to speak, and he was standing behind the podium. As the candidate was speaking, Abelardo told me that he was looking into the crowd and he saw her, the woman from the picture. He proceeds to tell me that he also paid attention to whom Esther was with so that he could find her later. I asked my mother if she remembered this, and she said of course she did. Esther recalled seeing Abelardo in the parade and thinking to herself that he was very handsome and that he looked like the famous Mexican actor Pedro Infante. She also remembers that the mariachis were playing La Cama de Piedra as a processional was going by.
De piedra de ser la cama, de piedra las cabeceras, la mujer que a mí me quiera.
The wedding began. Abelardo said that he was paying attention to Esther, where she was, whom she was with, and he saw her friend Delfina dancing with someone else and asked to cut in. He began to dance with Delfina and started asking her about Esther. He asked Delfina questions like who was Esther at the wedding with, if she was single, and so on. Esther proceeds to tell me that while Abelardo and Delfina were dancing, she was speaking to her sister Jovita. She asked Jovita who Delfina was dancing with. She said that she also told Jovita that the man Delfina was dancing with was handsome and he looked like Pedro Infante. Esther then proceeded to say that Jovita responded by saying that he looked like he was already the father of many kids and that she didn't know who he was. So then Esther says she tells her sister, Jovita, that she was going to ask Delfina if it was okay if she danced with him. When Delfina came back to join Esther and Jovita, Esther asked Delfina to let her dance with him, being Abelardo. Delfina told Esther not to worry because all Abelardo did was ask her about Esther. So Abelardo then tells me that he went up to Esther and asked her to dance. As they were dancing, he asked how old she was, and she replied with 20. Esther asked Abelardo how old he was, and he said he was 28. A couple of songs later, Esther tells Abelardo that she can't dance too many songs with him because she didn't want her father and brothers to get upset. He tells her that that's not a problem, and then he asked her where they were going to see each other the next day. Esther told him that she was not that kind of woman, and that she would not see him the next day. However, she did tell him that he could write to her if he wanted. So about a month after they met, Abelardo says that he was back at work at Stallman Farms, and he finally had the time to write her. So he says he wrote to her, and in his first letter, he asked her to be his girlfriend. Esther said that she could not say yes right away. She said she wrote a letter to him back stating that it all depended on him, his behavior, and how he was with others, both in New Mexico and in Mexico, as she had contacts in both places. She said that as she got to know him, she could give him a more concrete answer, and they continued to write to each other. As time passed, she agreed to be his girlfriend. Esther told me that in one of the letters, he wrote lyrics to a song called Usted. She said that it was a very romantic song.
Usted es la culpable de todas mis angustias y todos mis quebrantos. Usted llenó mi vida de dulces inquietudes y amargos desencantos. Su amor es como...
Then, as some time passed, Esther said that she wasn't getting any letters from Abelardo. And she started to worry, and she talked to her sister Jovita and told her how concerned she was that she hadn't heard from Abelardo. Esther said that at this point, her brother Patricio walked in reading one of the letters from Abelardo. Esther said that she got into an argument with her brother, and her brother was adamant to break them up. Esther told her brother that she didn't know why he and their father didn't want the girls in the family to have relationships with anyone. She asked him what was the point of that. She felt that they were treated as slaves sometimes because they worked harder than all of the males in the family, and yet the girls were supposed to live the lives of nuns and not have any contact with anyone. She told him that he could not stop her from being with a man that she loved. In anger, Esther said she wrote 2 letters that day. She said she wrote one letter to her friend Inés, whose family was the area postal carriers. In the letter to Inés, Esther asked Inés if she could take the letters that Abelardo would send to Esther and put them in another envelope and have the return address of Inés. By doing this, Esther's brothers and father wouldn't intercept the letters from Abelardo because they would think the letters were from Inés. The other letter Esther wrote that day was to Abelardo. In the letter to Abelardo, she asked him to send her letters to her friend Inés in care of Esther. Esther proceeded to tell Abelardo the plan as she told it to Inés. Once this was cleared up, they continued to exchange letters. About 2 years after writing to each other, Abelardo said he sent a letter to Esther asking her to marry him. He also said that if she agreed, his father Chon would be coming to Esther's house on June 3rd, the anniversary of when they met. He continued by saying that Esther replied back with a yes to the marriage proposal. Esther then stated that she was aware of Chon coming to ask for her hand in marriage, but she didn't know how to mention it to her parents. She said that she remembers very clearly being in the kitchen with her mother, Juanita, and that her mother said, "Look, there's Don Chon. He's got a letter in his front pocket. It looks like he's going to ask for someone's hand in marriage." And Esther said that at this moment she told her mom that he was there to ask for her hand in marriage. Esther said she remembers very clearly how emotional her mother got, and she began to cry. Esther's mother was very happy for her daughter. Esther continued by saying that Don Chon spoke to her father, Santiago, and showed him the letter Abelardo had sent him. Esther said that at this point her father became upset and told her, "Why have a wedding?" Esther said that she couldn't take it anymore, and she told her father that she didn't care if she got married under a tree. She was going to get married right away. She said her father finally came around and they started planning the wedding. Abelardo continued by telling me that they got married on August 15th, 1959. But the surprises weren't over. My mother told me that when they went to sign the marriage certificate, she saw that there was an error on it, or what she believed was an error. She said Abelardo's date of birth was off by 2 years, and she said she pointed it out to Abelardo, and then he told her that it was correct. On their wedding day, Esther found out that Abelardo was actually 10 years older than her. I asked her what she did after she found out the actual age difference. Esther replied with nothing because she loved him, and in the end, age didn't matter. It was only 2 years. I asked Abelardo why he lied to her about his age, and he said it was because he didn't want her to feel like he was too old for her. I asked him how come he didn't tell her at any point during their 3-year courtship about his real age, and Abelardo said it just never came up again. After hearing this story, some things didn't add up to me. So I asked them what happened to all of the times that they saw each other. I mean, I'd heard about all of these letters that they sent to each other for 3 years, but they never spoke of the times that they actually saw each other during their courtship. Both Abelardo and Esther told me that they didn't want anything to interfere with their relationship, especially my mom's brothers and father. So, they only saw each other 3 times. The first time they met, at a wedding where they casually ran into each other, and the third time was the day of their wedding. I was astonished and elated to hear their story. It was truly an unbelievable and incredible love story. My parents loved each other for 55 years. They are true examples of loving each other through sickness and health, in good times and in bad.